Welcome into the Keon Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Vince McKee. As you've seen over the last several weeks, we've had on one WWF legend after another, as well as some competitors from the UFC, MMA world, Bellator as well. Today, we continue that trend with WWF legend Sean Mooney. Sit tight, put your feet up, and grab something cold to drink. Up next, Sean Mooney. On the hotline with us now here on Keon Sports is Sean Mooney. Sean, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Considering what we're all going through right now, we all learn to adapt, and that's what we're doing out here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, up here in Northeast Ohio, definitely the same. We're actually getting ready for high school football up here, which is really for us at Keon Sports. One of the biggest things we broadcast is high school football, so we're just all kind of hoping. We're hoping we get a season, but who knows? It's not looking too good, to be honest with you.
Are they really trying to put something together? Like, they're going to have kids on the field?
Yeah, they're already having practices, like camps and everything, where they keep them separate, the offense from the defense, just running some drills, but that might be all we get this year.
At some point, they're going to have to run into each other. So yeah. We'll see how that goes, because, that's I know they're trying to they do that here out where I am, but, I'm out in Arizona, and the U of A is, the school here. And it's just, it's kind of crazy. I don't know how, what kind of a season we're going to have, or fans are going to be in the stands. I saw the Dodgers are going to have cutouts in the stands. So it has become quite a crazy world. No question about that.
Yeah, agreed. So I'll throw this out there real quick for you before we kind of get to the wrestling questions. I'm actually a huge fan of Arizona basketball, the college itself.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and Kenny, being up here in Cleveland, Ohio, Kenny Lofton was one of the few people to ever play in the NCAA, I think, Final Four, and then in the World Series as well with the Indians and obviously the Arizona Wildcats. But I'm a huge Wildcats basketball fan.
Yeah, it's quite a storied history with it. I mean, especially with the Lute Olson years. And when I moved back here, I went to work with Fox Sports Arizona, which was a regional sports network here. And so I was during those great years, not when they won the national championship, but not long after that. I covered them for like 10 years, so I got to know Lute Olson very well, and a lot of those great players that came through there, Richard Jefferson and Luke Walton, and all those great players they had during that period of time. Went to the Final Four with them. I think it was twice when I was there, and went to I don't know how many NCAA tournaments, but that was phenomenal. They've just had so many great athletes go through there, and Lofton is definitely one of those unique freak talents that. I don't think he even played that much baseball, but he's just one of those wired athletes that just whatever the sport is, whatever the playing field you put him on, he's going to do well, and baseball helped him extend his athletic career for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. And not too far from you guys. Actually, Lofton was one of the biggest names I ever interviewed when I started my career about 6 years ago. I landed him like almost immediately as an interview, and that's before I ever had really done anything. I was like shocked that he wanted to do it, but that was really cool. I was kind of that's when you come out of being a fan and you become a journalist, and it's like you're still a fan at heart, So that was a crazy one for sure. And then I gotta throw this out real quick, and I promise we'll start talking wrestling here in a second, but.
No, take your time. Yeah. Believe me, we can talk about wrestling. I've talked about that enough over the years. So whatever you want to throw at me, otherwise it's fine too.
The other big thing out there where you're at, not only is spring training baseball, which I think is on every sports fan's bucket list to get out to spring training one day. Arizona, Tucson used to have Goodyear was where the Indians were, just one of those things, but. Also in Arizona is the college, clearly, ASU, Arizona State University, the Sun Devils. One of my all-time favorite football players went there, Jake Plummer. And it's, we're big Buckeye fans out here, because I'm about 2 hours north of Columbus, I'd say. So we love the Ohio State Buckeyes. Well, they won the Rose Bowl back in, I want to say, 97, but just barely over Jake the Snake Plummer and Arizona State. Did you ever come in touch with him at all?
No, during those years, man, I didn't get back here to Arizona till almost 2000. So, there was a lot of great Arizona sports that I missed while I was gone. But of course, being back east in the New York area, they got a few things going on back there too. But no, I missed a lot of that era. And when I grew up here in Arizona, we didn't have many sports teams. I'm up there, so we always had to root for. You had to, pick a California team, or we had a lot of kids who were Cowboys fans because it was Texas. That was kind of close geographically, and I was a Dodgers fan, and then when as far as football, the Broncos, because we had a lot of Arizona players that went up there and played. Mm-hmm. And, then I went back east and worked in New England for a while. I became a Patriots fan. There's Teddy Bruschi and, of course, Gronkowski. But I was there when Bledsoe was the quarterback when I was working back in Boston.
Sure.
So I've been one of those that at least had the opportunity to root for a number of teams because we didn't have a hometown team. So, you got to root for the Cardinals. But I was growing up; they weren't here, and so I do root for them as now that I'm here, but not it's not like born into me like when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what else. In the New England Patriots Hall of Fame one day, they should put this guy in there. And he never played a snap for him, but fans will know what I'm talking about here in a second. The name of the guy is Mo Lewis, and the reason why I say that is I'm almost positive he's the one who delivered the hit on Bledsoe, who knocked him out of the game that began the Tom Brady era. I'm correct on that, aren't I?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't confirm that because I'd left Boston, but I just know it wasn't working with him and Pete. That didn't work out too well. But I do remember one thing when you mentioned Bledsoe, and I lived down in Medfield, which is south of Boston when I was there, and Bledsoe was in the process. He built this Colonial, and there was some, it was a very affluent area. They had big homes there, but it was kind of one of these places that was kind of turning, where they do these knockdowns. And he built this Colonial, and I think it was just ridiculous. I think he had like a 12-car garage, and it was just this gigantic, massive thing, and it took forever to build. And I just remember I left. He was still the quarterback, and then when he left the Patriots, I remember I think at his press conference he said something like, "Does anybody want to in the market for a really big house?" I don't think he ever even lived in the thing, but we used to drive over to look at it. I would say, "You got to see this," and we would drive over there. But Pete Carroll lived in the neighborhood down there too. They all liked living down south because it was not too far from Foxborough, and there was some good stories. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah, no, that's all good. That's funny as heck. Yeah. The Medfield too. That was Peter McNeely, the first guy to fight Tyson after his first stint in prison was Peter McNeely from Medfield, Mass. But yeah. See, I got all this useless knowledge, man. I can't talk politics or science, but I could.
That's always the most interesting, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And since we're talking sports, there's a lot of people. I mentioned that I work for Major League Baseball Productions, and you said that you thought maybe I was a Yankees fan, but I grew up out here in Arizona. I had an opportunity they shot a show out here in Tucson. Called The Baseball Bunch, and it was a show that Johnny Bench hosted, and they liked doing it out here because it was a right-to-work state and it was near spring training. And they actually had spring training here. The Indians were here back when I was a kid, yep. And they actually had some teams out, and then, of course, the White Sox, and that was, for many years. But anyway, so I got the opportunity to work for Major League Baseball Productions, so that was my first job in working in sports television. And that's how I got my start. And I was a producer and started to get in front of the camera because that was the early days of cable, and nobody knew what the hell to do with it. It was just this new animal that had 500 channels, and they were trying to fill it up. So Major League Baseball was dipping their fingers into it, and Major League Baseball Productions was actually part of Major League Baseball. We were an arm of the league. So that was just, an opportunity when you're like 22 years old. And here we are, based in New York. I'm living in New York City. Our building was right near 30 Rock. And we had, National and American League passes they gave us because we were part of the league. And we used to be able to take the subway up to Yankee Stadium and eat dinner. And go and watch part of the game. And if we were working, we go down and do interviews, then get back on the subway and head back into the city. But I had a chance to produce a bunch of highlight films. Nobody really knew that, or probably knows that. I produced 4 highlight films for the Dodgers. I did their 25-year history film. Another trivia that nobody really probably knows is I produced the center field video that they had on MTV with what's his name? Put Me In, Coach.
Oh, John Fogerty?
John Fogerty, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I produced that. If it's the black and white old video, and they used to on MTV, they would have credits on there, and I had a credit as an editor on that thing. But I cut that thing on one of the editing bays there, and it's all straight cuts if you look at it originally to the music. And it was just it was a crazy opportunity that I had this idea when they came over. They had these guys come into the production house because John wanted to do it with real, video of or film actually from, the old days of baseball. And I had been, combing through these because I was doing different shows. I ended up doing a show called Greats of the Game with Tim McCarver, and we produced, I think we did 3 seasons of that. But it was just a wonderful opportunity, and it really gave me a really deep background in television production and producing. And so by the time I got to the WWF, I mean, it's funny because Vince makes everybody do all these different things. And I was always amazed that he never said, hey, you know what, you produce too. Why don't you help do some of this stuff? Because I was just purely a talent the whole time I was there. But I had spent 6 years, almost 7 years, producing television shows. So anyway.
How'd you land with the WWF anyways? Like, how did that even come about?
Well, as I mentioned with the age of cable television, and I look back now and I remember, because we worked with the networks, or we worked pretty closely with NBC because, they did baseball. They had the baseball contracts then. And so I got to know a few of those guys that were very close to, doing that stuff. And I remember when they were talking about this thing called cable, and they basically laughed at it. They said, well, what the hell are they going to do with that? How are they going to fill that with programming? It's not going to last. And as I said, it was just this, land of opportunity, the way I saw it, because I saw the chance that I'm thinking they've got all of these channels. They're going to have to put programming on it at some point. And so we started producing shows for some of these startups. I remember I think it was Home Team Sports was one of the first ones we did. And they really had a great concept. I think it was called Race for the Pennant was one of the shows they did. And then we did this other one. And it was a brilliant idea that we would produce segments. Let's say in a show there's 4 different segments with commercial breaks. And so we would produce, let's say it was just a wrap-up of the week of, like, This Week in Baseball, which I also had the chance to work on. And we would produce these segments, and then a local station would pay the production company to have this package delivered every week. And then what they would do is we would send them a script, and then we'd write the on-cameras, and their sports guy would get in front of a camera and do the on-cameras, and then he'd voice over the segments, and it looked like their own really slick-looking sports show. And we could regionalize it, too, depending on what area of the country. But there were some markets that didn't have talent. And so I was producing these, and I said, let me just do the generic ones. And they're like, man, what the hell? It was one of those places where, it was like a fraternity house. All the guys that I worked with there wasn't anybody older than 30. And most of us were pretty much out of college, a couple of years in. And it was quite a fraternity. I mean, and I should say sorority too. There were some women there that were very, very talented. and people like Mike Tolan. I don't know if you know who he is, but he turned into a tremendous director. He one of his movies was Radio.
Okay.
You know, and it just has a list of credits. It's just unbelievable. Did a lot of stuff with Nickelodeon, and then Joe Levine, who is you know, the guy who's produced all those tremendous HBO documentaries. Chris Chambers is you know, huge with the WWE, and these are just guys. And there was probably maybe, I don't know, 15 of us, and all of them had tremendous careers. And it was and we competed against each other doing these shows. But anyway, long story longer is me getting that opportunity to host these segments. I started doing more on camera work. They liked the stuff I was doing. And one of the shows, we started to branch out. We did a show called Light Moments in Sports. And we had an opportunity to get Joe Namath to host it, which, I mean, you can imagine the playground I was in. Like, I got to do all this stuff, and then I got to work with Joe Namath.
Oh, that's huge.
Who, you know, I mean, for me, he was the greatest, a tremendous football player, but also, you know, the most popular bachelor ever in the world. And we got to hang out with him. And anyway, so we did the show. It's called Live Moments in Sports. It was one of the first blooper shows that was out there, where we got, you know, these bloopers, because we would always, Major League Baseball had a big thing. We would do these segments every week, but it was just baseball. And somebody said, well, other sports must have these too. And NFL Films did it, but we wanted to do them with all sports. So we'd get, you know, hockey, you know, everything we could get our hands on. And we did this show, and I think there's some, it's on YouTube. You guys can look them up somewhere. It's called Light Moments in Sports, and Joe Namath was the host. And I was one of the producers on the show, and Joe couldn't go out there and do segments, and they wanted to have some segments that we would produce. So again, I'm like, I'll do it, you know, let me do it. And so I kind of became the correspondent, and we would do these crazy segments. You know, like they sent me to, you know, the paint, those paint dart, you know, where people shoot with the paintballs, and went to this crazy Olympics that they did with all kinds of crazy animals, and rode ostriches, and you know, just did whatever they wanted me to do. I just wanted to get on TV. And one of the segments we did, we went to the Monster Factory in New Jersey, which Larry Sharp was the guy who owned that place. He was a wrestler of note. And we went there and did a segment, and I was the idiot who went there to try and get trained in wrestling. And then, of course, they beat the living crap out of me, and, you know, mocked me and whatever. And somehow people up at WWF saw it. And I had a friend, one of the guys that had worked at baseball, had gone to work for Vince up in Stanford, working in their video distribution department. And he called me up and he said, they were talking about you. They saw this segment that we aired on the NBC affiliate in New York. And I told him, I know you, and he wants you to come up and audition to be an announcer. And I'm like, what? Like, I mean, I knew what was going on with the WWF, but I didn't grow up a big wrestling fan. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but to me, it was an opportunity. I was like, well, what the hell? I mean, what do I got to lose? I'll go up there, and they, you know, like, hey, can I give me your phone number? I'm like, sure, you know. So they called me, and I went up, and I did one audition, which, looking back, is just insane, because maybe I was just so naive about what was going on then, and how much of a opportunity that was. But so I did pretty well in the audition, apparently, and I think because I just thought, oh, I'm not going to get this, it'll just be a great experience. And 2 weeks later, they called me and said, do you want the job? I didn't have to go back up. I didn't have to do another audition. They just offered me the job. And so that's where it started.
So who came up with the idea of Ian Mooney?
Oh God, that was, you know, people look so deep into that. It's so funny, and they still think that I have a sister, Betty, that Heenan came up with just to, you know, it was as part of the ribbing, and And it stuck. Like to this day, people think that I did some kind of bit with that or something. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, if that's what you want to go with. But Ian was really, they just needed, I was in Stamford. Alfred Hayes, Lord Alfred, we lived in Stamford. It's different now. I think they have more people there, but most of the talent lived in Florida, and you could live anywhere in the country, but pretty much most of them lived there. We didn't have any other guys really living up there. Gorilla would come in from down near Philly, and they would come up like every 3 weeks, and they would shoot everything. And Gene would come up from Florida. Gene lived in Florida, but we lived in Stamford, and they shot I think it was Wrestling Spotlight.
Yep.
And Vince would start hosting things. He would do stuff, and then he'd just get bored of it, or he'd get too busy, and then there would be an opportunity. And they needed somebody to host Wrestling Spotlight, but they needed me also doing the event center. So Bruce Pritchard said, "Well, let's make Sean a twin," and or should I go with the work here and tell you, they said, "Can your brother do this?" But the thing is, I'm still disappointed to this day. It was my chance to be a heel, and they never let me do it. When they first told me about it, I'm like, "That's awesome!" I get to be this alter ego, and they didn't. No, just play it straight. You got to be the foil for Sherry, and I'm like, oh God, I was like dying for Ian to come out and smash me in the head with a guitar and take over the event center or something, just do some nasty, horrible things. But, Ian didn't get to live up to his true character. I think that he would have been, but I have to give credit. That's Bruce Pritchard who came up with that as he did many other things with me.
Yeah, as a kid, man, I remember watching that and thinking whatever happened to that guy's twin brother? Like, he's just gone all of a sudden, but that's great. So some wrestling questions for you here, just because you were there, and you would probably have some good insight, I would imagine. During 1990.
Before we get in there, though, I just want to mention though that if people really are curious about Ian, there's an episode of my podcast where we reunited very briefly, and I actually brought him on the podcast. And I just say it didn't go well, but it is worth a listen. So. There's 270 episodes, I think we have, or over 200 original episodes anyway. And you can check that one out. Prime Time with Sean Mooney.
That is hilarious. I will be doing that shortly. So in 1998, the year you kind of arrived and had your full-time run with them, in the beginning, Macho Man Randy Savage, one of the greatest of all time, was holding the championship belt. Was there a sense around the company that he was just kind of holding on to it until Hulk Hogan came back and kind of, would eventually step in again? Or was there a little bit of mystery involved with that? Or was it just a foregone conclusion that, hey, he's just keeping it warm for Hogan?
Well, I think if anybody really knew Randy, to Randy, it was never, he wasn't going to hold on to a belt for anybody. I mean, Randy was an individual who was very driven, and Randy was going to just siphon every opportunity that he could get. So anybody who thinks that may have been Vince's plan, I don't know if Vince really knew what was going to go on with Hulk, because of he was becoming they were mainstream, but Hulk was becoming a superstar, and I think maybe he envisioned a little bit what we've seen happen to The Rock, to Dwayne, because, that he would go and then just move on to, bigger and greater things. But I think, as we all know what happened, that Hulk had quite, some success with movies, but nothing like what we've seen with someone like The Rock. So I think that maybe in Randy's mind, he didn't, if he didn't come back, that's great. But he just would roll with anything, and if they took it away from him, then he would still be on top, working with everybody to do everything he possibly could. And Randy was one of those guys. You've probably heard the conversation. You don't always need a belt to be to make a lot of money or be incredibly popular. Randy, to me anyway, was, and somebody could disagree, but Randy didn't need a belt as far as I was concerned. I think that he was just an incredible performer, and I don't know if he ever got his due. That people ever really recognized what he did every night that he went out into that ring, despite what anybody might think of him one way or another. But he was. I don't know if there was too many others that gave as much as he did every time he went out from that black curtain into an arena.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He was one of my all-time favorites, and the older I get and the more old footage I go back and watch, absolutely. I wanted to ask you this. This is kind of a quick one here. Donald Trump, man, you interviewed him, and it was like, and I couldn't figure out because you didn't seem like you were nervous, but then you kind of seemed a little nervous. I'm like, is this like, are they trying to make him like the jittery announcer, or what was going on there? Like, I have to ask, like, was he intimidating in person, or what was he like? Because it's right there on WrestleMania, and I think you might even call him Donald Day Trump, which I thought was hilarious. But like, what was he like?
Well, that was like one of the worst interviews I ever did. I mean, the thing, I think that was my first WrestleMania. Yep. And my first, introduction to that world where it was just, my God, you're in an arena with thousands of people. It's live. I think that, although you could be intimidated by Donald Trump, that was the least of my worries. I just wanted to get through that interview, and I got better. But yeah, I look back at that, and I really, it's, I don't, people rib me about it or whatever, but it was pretty awful. And just say, I talk to kids who are, want to get into television, and I say, look, bad shit happens. I mean, it's just, especially on live TV. And one thing I learned, and that's one thing I learned early on, was, yeah, just keep going. Yep. And to this day, I mean, I'm on live television every single day, and I still ain't perfect, but I think it's just how you handle it. But that was certainly one of the greatest memories ever, and it's it's those things. Okay, there it is, and you're like, oh God, now everybody, because the guy becomes the damn president, for Christ's sakes, So I feel like everybody they sent me that video, they sent me the pictures, they want me to sign them, so.
Well,
I was probably, a lot of nerves. It even got better though there, like when I did the thing with the Bushwhackers, that went well. I think I settled down a little bit, but that was like my first shot. I was like, okay, Donald Trump in front of Donald Day Trump or whatever the hell I called him. But that's a fond memory. It's a great lesson in life.
I'm like the Rain Man when it comes to wrestling. Back in the day, I watched it so much, and I remember all that so clearly because they set you up 3 different times. You had the Bushwhackers licking you, which you hung tough for. You did the Donald Day Trump, but then they put you up in the cheap seats, and you say, who's going to win this match? And this guy just keeps going, Jake's the man, Jake's the man, Jake's the man. And you're like, you're trying to ask him a question, he's just like, Jake's the man. And you're just like, all right, this guy's going to say it all.
Didn't I get buried in a sea of people?
Yeah.
I just, to me, it's funny. People remember so much more than I ever do. It's just kind of like, Gene and I got to spend some time together the last few years, and we would talk about stuff, and he would say, people come in, well, do you remember when that happened? I'm like, no, I don't. He goes, because when people are like fans, the wrestling fans are the greatest fans in the world, and believe me, I have covered every professional sport, every college team. College sports, and nothing compares. There are no more loyal fans, and one way or the other, you always know what you're getting. They're very, very honest, and it's just amazing to me. I mean, this was, I was with the WWF from 87 until 93. I mean, just a little more than I think 5 years in a span of my lifetime, and I still get mail, and I know when things, the network came back, and then of course I got into doing the podcast, and that certainly put me back out there. But it just I was always amazed that people would find me, for one thing, and they would send me those baseball cards. And to this day, I mean, I've got 3 sitting right here on a tray in front of me here that people have sent me, just asking me to sign and send it back to them from all over the world. And like I said, there's no greater fans in the world than wrestling fans. It's just blown me away that that's the way they are. It's incredibly loyal and so smart about what things that have happened. It just is amazing to me. But they're great.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. And we'll have to hook up after this. I'll send you a text because if you want to send me a promo photo, I'd gladly put it in our studio. That'd be sweet. So let me ask you this: you mentioned his name earlier in the interview. And he's iconic in a lot of ways. And a lot of people... Yes. You there? Uh-oh. Hello. So you mentioned his name earlier in the interview, Lord Alfred Hayes. And I have to ask, you did a lot of super tapes with him. Super tapes, another cult classic. A lot of old school fans like myself have them. What was he like?
Oh, I hated that son of a bitch.
No.
I love Alfred Hayes. I love that guy. He was, a matter of fact, I mean, if it wasn't for him, and I would say Gorilla never made it past the first year, because, as I said, I wasn't smart to the business and by any means. And if he hadn't taken me under his wing and guided me along and gave me advice and told me, how to handle things and get past the carny and all the other stuff that went with it, I wouldn't have made it. And we became very, very close friends. And like I said, we both lived in Stanford, so we spent a lot of time together, and we just had a ball doing those videos. Those on cameras that we did were just so much fun, and a lot of it early on before those things got really big and they started making bigger productions out of them. But when they first started doing that, they didn't know what the hell they wanted to do with them. And we were over in the television facility, and if anybody knows how it all works, or at least in those early days, is that they built the tower. And Vince and all of the the corporate part of the company were housed there, and then they had the television production facility, which is over on Hamilton Avenue in Stanford, and that was our own little world. Nobody really bothered us much. Kevin Dunn was there, he was a producer at the time, and he produced the shows, but it was a pretty small operation. There was not a whole lot of production people. I mean, when we would do shows and stuff, they'd pick up people, crews on the road and stuff. But as far as the core of that company, it was pretty small. And at the television facility, you had Kevin Dunn and some of the other people there that did production, maybe 5 or 6 people that we were putting all the shows together, and graphics people and that kind, and then people that were sending tapes out. But we were pretty much the talent there. We were there whenever they needed anything done. And so when they started doing those tapes, they just like, well, you got to do these wraparounds. And they assigned us a producer, and we would say, okay, so what are most of these, matches about? What was the theme or whatever? And they're like, I don't know. And so it was just a collection of matches. So we would go, and they had this huge prop closet. I mean, it was a huge prop closet. They would keep, a lot of the stuff. And we go shopping, and we would go in there, for example, I think there was a tape we did. It was kind of a naval theme. And it was because whatever they had some bit, they had done something else. And they had like, some sailor hat in there, and I grabbed a mop or something, and we would basically riff. I mean, Alfred and I would just say, okay, so we're going from this match to this other match. Okay, let's go. Yeah. And that's pretty much how we did it. And for the first, I don't know how many, and then they started to get really popular, and they started paying attention to it, and they were making money, and that's when it started the sets got more elaborate, They controlled us a lot more. But I know there was a few times when Vince would see that and was like, what the hell are they doing over, and they were, and I remember Bruce pulling me aside and Alfred and saying, what do you, this stuff is so random. What are you doing? And that's what it's all about now. They went, so we were ahead of our time, I think, but mostly it was just we were having fun.
Yeah.
Really. That was pretty much. But Alfred, really, he was one of my very, very dear friends. And it was, I still miss him to this day. We used to talk all the time.
Yeah, I think he's destined. I think, in my honest opinion, he should be in the Hall of Fame. But, maybe that happens.
Yeah, he is through the, however they do it.
That's right.
It's kind of like the, baseball that the writers elect somebody or put him, as posthumously or something. But, yeah, that's a crime. Because not only was Alfred, a great wrestler, he was a tremendous heel that people, never really got to see that side of him. But early on, when he was wrestling, he was, he had that snob look down your nose at you, look down his nose at you, English, asshole, and he was really good at it. And he had to be a babyface for all the time, most of the stuff that we did, and what Vince had him do. But he was just great. And then, the Tuesday Night Titans and when he was Vince's sidekick. I mean, he did so much of that company early on and was so loyal. It's a damn shame. I mean, if anybody should be full on elected, Lord Alfred Hayes should have been.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You mentioned your first year being kind of tough and you got the role of it from there. So one of the guys who had a reputation back then, and I've spoken with several people who have said this guy was very hard to work with, is the Ultimate Warrior. And again, I'm not trying to speak bad of the dead or anything crazy like that. But, at WrestleMania 6, they take the belt off of Hogan, they put it on Warrior. What was the general mood behind the scenes with that? Were a lot of people for it? They didn't care? They thought, hey, did this guy really deserve this? What was kind of the thinking behind all that, that you might have heard at the time?
Well, if you remember, like when I came in at in '87, and things had really taken off, say in '85 after the first WrestleMania, and so Vince realized at that point, and he had started. If you look at some of their production value before that, and then after that, how tremendously different it became.
Yep.
And Vince realized that he was going to have to bring in people from outside to really take it to the levels that he wanted to take it to, and that included everywhere, from the production side, people like me that were, weren't from the world of wrestling, and that included talent, up to that point it was very generational. You had guys that had come from the families, people like, the Harts and Kurt Hennig and guys like that. You had that one, big part of wrestling, but then you had other guys that started coming in from different worlds. And of course, Jim was from, the bodybuilding world and a few other things he had done. But they saw the talent in him. And, you had a lot of that happening. They'd bring people in that were just so green and they didn't know how to work. And, I don't think Jim was, really ready for that level where he was just catapulted into that situation. And so you had a lot of resentment, but that's part of the business. I mean, each one of those guys that worked, they were independent contractors. Everybody was on their own. So it was, very, very cutthroat, and it was the Wild West. You had a beef with somebody, you settled it backstage, and that was not uncommon. So, sure, there was an awful lot of resentment, but to this day, I mean, Vince McMahon is a brilliant marketer, and he saw gold and saw what this guy did when all he had to do was go out there and shake the ropes to that music, and they'd blow the roof off the arena. So, sure, there may have been resentment, but what it all came down to was making money. And like I said, I don't, fame does weird things to people. I didn't know Jim as a person before he got there, but I saw it happen more than once where people were put in that position and it just changed them. And it didn't help the fact that he didn't come from that world, so he didn't really understand it. And, he didn't help himself because he was stiff. And you piss a few of those guys off, man, they give it back to you, as they say, a receipt. And, that was what it was all about then. And, I think it was a combination of things with his personality. So, he was tough. I mean, I worked with Jim. There's sometimes I didn't know who was going to show up, and that probably had some influence from what he was putting into his body too. But, you never knew. But there were other times where I'd see him spend time with a kid, that was one of those Make-A-Wish kids or some, just a kid that had been hanging out. So he was all over the place. But in some ways, I mean, I felt bad for him in the sense that, I could understand that not being part of that world and trying to fit in. And yet he had it coming to him from all sides. And I don't think that, many people can handle that. And, it certainly, I think that you think about like what that guy might have done if the circumstances had been different. So, I'm kind of split on that because, like I said, I saw the good Jim and I saw the bad Jim too. I mean, there's some bad times that I spent with him too.
Well, you mentioned bodybuilding, so that leads me to my next question. Exactly how much IcoPro do you have sitting in your basement as we speak?
Oh well, it's in a separate location. Yeah. I just can't get it marketed. I tried to sell it overseas, but they still don't want it either.
What was that about?
That was a really interesting period of time, and it's fortunate because, as I mentioned, Vince McMahon is a brilliant marketer. It's just the stuff that he's been able to do, but it's as long as it's wrestling, like all the other ventures that he's gone into with the movies, and you mentioned the bodybuilding supplement. I mean, he had this idea with the WWF that that he was going to change the world of bodybuilding because he'd done it with professional wrestling, and he felt what was missing with bodybuilding is he didn't give these guys personalities. You didn't give them the fans, somebody, some character, a personality to root for. And so he, brought these guys on and paid them a lot of money, which really didn't give them a good start with in the company when it came to the wrestlers, because none of them had contracts. Here he's paying these guys ungodly sums to go work out and then come to an arena now and then and pose. So, that wasn't going to work well. But the other part, as far as a business standpoint, that's not what the bodybuilding world needed, but the way the money was made with supplements. And I remember I was in LA for that pay-per-view event. And I don't know if you've ever looked up the numbers, but I think it's a record. I think it was, like triple digits for the entire pay-per-view. I mean, it was awful because remember the guys couldn't do juice,
right?
And most of them, a couple of them, Gary Stridham, and they were ahead of the curve or knew how to beat the stuff or something. I don't know. I have no idea, but I just know a lot of them looked awful, and it was just painful. It was just, I couldn't wait to get out of LA that time. Yeah.
Well, speaking of not being able to get away from something, I got to ask you this. This is one of our fan questions. So if the professional questions I asked you were not bad enough, here are a couple straight from the fans. And like you say, man, their memories are amazing. I'll give you a serious one first and then a silly one. The serious one, shortly before you left the company, they put the belt on Bret Hart and started to get away from bigger guys like the Warrior, Hogan, and Savage. You might have just answered that question with the tail end of your other answer, but why do you think Vince went in that direction? And obviously that was the exact time as the steroid trials.
Yeah, well, I don't think it had to do with not having a monster with a belt or somebody with this, huge cut, athlete. I don't think that was part of it. I think if you have to remember what was going on at the time, and you had all these guys that were defecting. they were bleeding cash. The business was not good, and Bret was somebody that he could always count on. I mean, Bret was very loyal, and I think initially when he made the plans for that, he really did plan on having Bret around for a long time, and then he made that super deal with him, and then broke it. But I think at the time he didn't really have too many options, So I don't think the bodybuilding aspect or having not having somebody there that people would think was some kind of steroid freak, because I just think it was what was going on at the time, and he needed somebody who could carry the torch that he could count on, and Bret was that guy.
You don't have to convince me on that one. Bret Hart is actually my all-time favorite wrestler.
Well, he's right up there with me too. There's a few, and he definitely is. He was, I just thought, one of the greatest ever, and knowing him backstage too, and so he was the total package.
I agree. So here's another one from a fan, though. This one's a little bit silly. And this is funny because I've tried to book this guy on the show numerous times. I've got him to the phone, and he just always pulls out at the last second. Did Nails really choke Vince McMahon?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that happened. What do you think that he was vanished? I mean, yeah, that happened. I didn't see it. I was, at the arena. But I totally believe that he was in that room with him, and they, from what I heard, had to pull him off him.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean,
I would have. Oh God, I would have loved to interview Nails. I tried to track him down, and just never was able to get him. But he would be just a fascinating interview.
Yeah.
I don't know why he hasn't done more. I mean, I know that he sells merchandise and that kind of thing. You'd think that that would help tremendously, because he doesn't do many. But
no, and I got his promo picture 2 feet behind me. So he owns a trailer company in Minnesota. Free plug for him there. And so I called this trailer company, and he picked up the phone. Like, it goes right to his cell phone. So I'm talking with them, and I'm explaining, hey, we've had Ken Shamrock on, Ricky Morton, Tom Pritchard. We've had on some good guests from the WWF realm, and but he will not do it. So he sent me a promo picture, which I thought was kind of nice. But yeah, I agree with you. That, to me, that would be one that I would love to get. So we got 2 more questions here for you, and thank you again. Absolutely love talking sports. 2 questions left. Both of these are for me. So I want to ask you, because you're still involved here. Who do you think are the best overall talents currently in the wrestling industry? Doesn't matter the promotion. You can pick whoever you want. But really, who are the next 3 or 4 big names that you see sticking around for a long time?
Oh God. Well, I don't follow it as much anymore. But I see some of these people that are still around, and still. I mean, one thing I've always loved about Chris Jericho is that the guy, I mean, if you've tracked his career, how many ups and downs that guy's had along the way, and just keeps delivering, and keeps finding a way to make people look at him. And I think that is, he's up there, and he's still out there. Some of the younger kids, I mean, I think like Bray, why I've always liked Roman Reigns. I've never understood why it never has just taken off. I don't know, just some people you don't know what it is. But, I love the Young Bucks. I think they're just incredibly entertaining. But, I don't keep up enough on it, to really be a judge of it anymore. But, I'm asked this all the time. Excuse me. And people want me to talk about some of these guys. And I think that one of the biggest shames about it all is that, back when I worked in that era, they didn't have writers, and I know you've heard this all before, but I'm just, saying from what I saw back then. And, they were just able to be more original. They were able to find their characters, and then they had no choice. They either were able to develop them, or they didn't last. And I think that ability to allow them to be have that be individuals and really deep deep down into a deep ability to find some of that creativeness and be allowed to fail, that it would be different. And I just think that now you don't have those rich characters. Back then, everybody had their, Bret was Bret Hart and the Hitman, and you knew exactly what that was about. The Honky Tonk Man was who he was, a warrior. Those tag teams was Axe and Smash and Demolition. That their characters were so defined, and they lived them. Roddy Piper, is a great example of that. Who just said, "I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I'm just this is either it works for me or it doesn't. You tell me to go home." And I think that the money, the contracts, the pressure, the stage that they're on these days, you just don't see that as much. And if you look at some of the modern era, I guess you'd say, but somebody like Steve Austin or The Rock, they reached that point when they finally said, "You know what, screw it. I can't." Both of them were at points in their career where they didn't know where it was going, and they just, Austin had been at it for a long time, and when they both just said, "No, I'm going off the tracks here, and I either make it or I'm done," and then they reached the greatest heights ever. So. That's pretty much my take on it.
Last question for you, and again, thank you for joining us today. This was a blast, I gotta say. Every once in a while as a journalist, I could cross over to being a fan again and mix both worlds, and this has been, doing these WWF interviews and MMA interviews allows me to do that, which is a great feeling. Last question for you, though. So, you were gone a short amount of time, in '93, away from the company. You were done with WWF. And about a year after you had left, though, I'm going to say about a year or so, ballparking it, Hulk Hogan went to the WCW. As somebody who had worked for Vince, had seen their relationship, and really just been, around that environment. I know you said everybody's an independent contractor, and I get that, but it's so crazy. Like, in today's terms, it'd be like if all of a sudden John Cena showed up on AEW, people would be stunned. How stunned were you? Like, were you thinking to yourself, like, holy crap, how did that happen?
I think because I was, I lived in that kingdom. I mean, it's like it was Camelot, Stanford. And I saw how, I got a really good glimpse at how the business worked. And honestly, no, I wasn't blown away. I think that, the business is you take the opportunity where you see it. And, people like Terry saw that. And Randy was the same opportunity. They, Vince had kind of pushed him into kind of this elder role and wanted him to be an announcer and he would fill in, and he went down there and did, very well. Hulk reached a whole new level of fame from doing that. So, no, I mean, that's the nature of the business. And that's where it was going then, and it was big money. I think that what they were able to pull off with having Scott Hall go down there and Kevin Nash. I mean, that to me was like, whoa, just for the simple point that Bischoff was able to pull that off. But really, no, nothing surprised me. The answer to that question is, it was shocking in a sense because they both made each other. Hulk wouldn't have been Hulk if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon would never have reached the heights without Hulk Hogan. But I think when it all came down to it, it was okay. This is business, and I'm sure that it hurt Vince, as a few of those other departures did. But I think when bottom line, it was business.
Well, Sean, great to have you on. I got to throw out this last little nugget for you. And this is what I tell people all the time. If you've been doing this as long as you have, and now I think I'm year 6 of doing this kind of stuff, Okay, there's gonna be an article that you put out there that has a typo in it. Somewhere somehow your voice is gonna be on the record screwing something up. Yeah. I mean, so going back, yeah, exactly, right. So going back to that Donald J. Trump, I had to tell you, last year like I said, ironically, how everything comes back to square one. We were doing high school football last year. There was a Hail Mary touchdown pass to win a game. One of the best teams in the state lost on this fluke Hail Mary touchdown pass from easily 60 yards out. This kid just chucked it. And I'm on the call, and I say, he catches it, and I'm going nuts, and I can't think of anything to say. And the first words that come out of my mouth, I go, "Sweet Mother Teresa," and I don't know, where the hell I pulled that out of. But now that's on tape, and it's okay. So that was maybe the dumbest announcing thing I ever could have said at that moment. But it popped in your head. So go
that was your boom. That was your boom. Boom goes the dynamite. That video, yeah. And now that's your signature call, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because we're here in Northeast Ohio. The team that beat them, and this is how bad. I mean, good luck, bad luck, whatever luck. The team that beat them was from Canada. This team in Ohio is so good. They're called St. Ignatius, that they actually have to play teams from out of state and even up in Canada just to get opponents to play them. So in Canada, this thing went viral. They did a highlight film of the Hail Mary touchdown pass, took my voice, and it had like 13,000 hits within a minute of just being broadcast all over Canada. And I'm like, that's hysterical. I'm like, probably the dumbest thing I've ever said on the record. But it is what it is. But honestly, all joking aside, this was great. Like I always tell people too, again, in this industry, you meet people that you looked up to as a kid, even as a young adult. You meet these people 9 times out of 10, they're great people. Every once in a while, they're a jackass. So I am glad that you were not a jackass. So I definitely want to thank you for that as well.
Hey, no. Yeah. Well, this is of course my interview persona. I really am a jackass. So. No, but anyway, I really enjoyed the conversation, Vince. I'd love to have folks check out Prime Time with Sean Mooney. Probably people know at this point I haven't been doing any more episodes. I kind of got to the point where I'm like, okay, who's left? There's guys I wanted to get and just didn't. But for now, we just got it. It's up, and you can check out the episodes. We did, I think 200 original episodes. We've got just about anybody you could imagine we talked to. But I've also started another podcast and a YouTube channel called Upside of 40.
Yes,
and it's basically for guys that are about my age and younger, of just all the stuff we deal with. And I'm having a blast with it and interviewing just all kinds of different personalities and stuff that I've always been interested in finding out. So I'd love to have people check it out. Just go to YouTube and search Upside of 40 with Sean Mooney. And I'm starting this thing from the ground. Being Sean Mooney is nobody could give a damn. I want to do something for men of a certain age, but I've always loved production. I love doing videos, and I'm going to keep doing it. I'm still working. I do I host a morning show out where I am, but that's what I'm doing. And folks wanted to get in touch with me. You can just email me at primetimemooney@gmail.com.
Excellent. There it is. And we're going to put a link for Upside of 40 in the actual article. We're going to throw that in there. That way fans can click right on it for you. Sean, from everybody at Keon Sports, I want to thank you again. I'll be in touch soon. I'm going to shoot you my address for that promo photo, and I'm going to put you right up next to your good buddy Nails. How's that sound?
Sounds awesome. Sweet Mother Teresa.
There you go. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right, Vince. Take care.
Bye now. So that was Sean Mooney. What a blast that was. Great interview. No doubt about it. Want to thank everybody again for listening here on Keon Sports. Mentioning it on the podcast a couple hundred times there. High school football, knock on wood. We will see. Grab your rosary. We'll see where it goes. But it's supposed to happen. And if you want a 30-second ad during our broadcast of high school football, email me, CoachFin14@yahoo.com. For Sean Mooney and Keon Sports, this is Vince McKee. Have a good night, everybody.